Today we're going to focus on the following 10 keywords: lag, below, diversity, enumerate, maneuver, formulate, confront, duration, self-seeking, and discretion. Now let's start with the first keyword, lag. Now we can see in the picture we have three cyclists and they're cycling along a road that might be in the countryside somewhere, but that's not the point. We can see that the one in front is a little bit ahead of the others and the others are falling behind. So how does that relate to the word lag? Or does it relate to this or to the idea of cycling? Let's find out. Now lag is a verb. If one thing or person lags behind another thing or person, their progress is slower than that of the other. Just like the three cyclists, we could see two of them lag behind. For example, Britain still lags behind most of Europe in its provisions for women who want time off to have babies. So that means Britain still needs to work on it to catch up with the other European countries. Or we can say, he now lags 10 points behind the champion. He needs 10 points to tie the champion. He's 10 points behind. Or we can use lag as a countable noun. A time lag or a lag of a particular length of time is a period of time between one event and another related event. For example, there's a time lag between infection with HIV and developing AIDS. So it doesn't happen at the same time. There is a time difference. There is a period of time between one event and another that is related to it. In this case, between contracting HIV and developing AIDS. And lag can also be used in a different meaning, this time as a verb. If you lag the inside of a roof, a pipe, or a water tank, you cover it with a special material in order to prevent heat escaping from it or to prevent it from freezing. For example, water tanks should be well lagged and the roof well insulated. So the next time you remember this picture of these three cyclists, remember the word lag and what it means. And now for the next keyword, below. Now you look at this picture of this young lady and it seems like it is a little bit windy because we can see her dress is blowing, most probably because of the wind. But the important thing in our picture is the word we have. How does below relate to this picture? Does it relate to the young lady? Does it relate to the place, to the beach? Does it relate to her dress or the way her dress is blowing in the wind? Let's find out. Now, the word below is a verb. When something made of cloth billows, it swells out and moves slowly in the wind, just like what we saw in the picture. For example, the curtains billowed in the breeze. And synonyms for this meaning of below are the words surge, roll, expand, or swell. And we can use below in a different meaning as well. When smoke or cloud billows, it moves slowly upwards or across the sky. For example, steam billowed from under the hood. And that usually means that the car is heating up. You need to stop and see what's wrong before you fry the engine. And synonyms for this meaning of below are the words flow, course, rush, or stream. So the next time you remember this picture, remember the word below and what it means. And now for the next keyword, diversity. Now you look at the picture and you can see four hands holding one another. But of course, you can notice that the hands do not belong to one person. They belong to four people from four different races. We can tell from the color of the hands. Well, the message of this picture is really good, but what we want to focus on is the word we have here, which is diversity. How does diversity relate to the idea we have in the picture here? Does it relate to hands or hands holding one another? Or does it relate to the differences we have in this picture? Let's find out. Now, diversity is a variable noun, and a variable noun is a noun that can be used as a countable noun or as an uncountable noun, and that's why we call it a variable noun. The diversity of something is the fact that it contains many very different elements, just like the picture we saw. For example, we say the cultural diversity of British society. Now, in Britain, there are a lot of people who come from different places, bringing with them different cultures. So there is the cultural diversity. It's not one, it comes from many different elements. Another example, to introduce more choice and diversity into the education system. You don't want to have the same thing and teach the same thing to all the kids. You need to introduce more choice and diversity, different elements into the education system. And synonyms for diversity are the words difference, diversification, variety, and divergence. And diversity can have a different meaning, and in this case, it's a singular noun, so it's always singular. A diversity of things is a range of things which are very different from each other. So it is pretty much the same like the first meaning, but it is used in a different way. For example, his object is to gather as great a diversity of material as possible. Diversity of material, that means we need material that is different from each other. We don't need the same kind of material, we need a diversity of material. And synonyms for this meaning of diversity are the words range, variety, sweep, and scope. So the next time you remember this picture of these four hands holding each other, remember the word diversity and what it means. And now for the next keyword, enumerate. Now we look at the picture and we can see a thing that we must have used once or twice in our lives, or for some people they use it every day, and that is a to-do list. A to-do list is a simple list where you write the things you want to do, whether it is a daily list or a weekly list or a monthly list, it doesn't matter. It's still a to-do list, things you need to do, but you put them point by point, usually numbering them 1, 2, 3, etc. So how does that relate to the word enumerate? Does it have to do with the to-do list itself, or does it have to do with numbering the tasks that you want to do and you include in this to-do list? Let's find out. Enumerate is a verb. When you enumerate a list of things, you name each one in turn, just like the way we saw in this picture in a to-do list. For example, I enumerate the work that will have to be done. I put a list and I name each of the things we need to do in turn. So the next time you remember this picture of the to-do list, remember the word enumerate and what it means. And now for the next keyword, maneuver. Now you look at the picture and you can see that this young lady is choking and this man is helping her. Now this specific way, when you press your arms against somebody's chest and try to press as hard as you can to get whatever is choking that person out, is called the Heimlich maneuver. And it is a very famous maneuver they teach in first aid courses, and it can help save somebody's life. But anyway, our focus here is not the first aid part of it, but the maneuver part of it. Well, Heimlich, of course, is after the name of the person who came up with this maneuver, but how does that relate to the word maneuver? Why do we call something like that a maneuver? What does maneuver mean? Let's find out. Now, maneuver is a verb. If you maneuver something into or out of an awkward position, you skillfully move it there. For example, we attempted to maneuver the canoe closer to him. It was not easy and it needed a lot of skill. It was in an awkward position, but we did it. We maneuvered the canoe closer to him. Or the pilot instinctively maneuvered to avoid them. Also, it was not easy. It was an awkward position, but using the skill the pilot had, he avoided them. Now, synonyms for this meaning of maneuver are the words steer, direct, guide, and pilot. And maneuver can also be used as a noun. For example, a ship capable of high speed and rapid maneuver. It moves very fast out of awkward positions and very skillfully. But that's not all about maneuver. If you maneuver a situation, you change it in a clever and skillful way so that you can benefit from it. For example, he brilliantly maneuvered himself back to power. But we're talking about power here. He was out of power for some time, but he brilliantly maneuvered himself back. He changed the situation very cleverly and very skillfully. And also maneuver here can be a noun. For example, maneuvers to block the electoral process. Or we can use maneuvering as a variable noun. For example, his unrivaled skill in political maneuvering. And obviously maneuvering is a word that fits the world of politics very well. Maneuver can also be used in a very special context as a plural noun. Military maneuvers are training exercises which involve the movement of soldiers and equipment over a large area. For example, Allied troops begin maneuvers tomorrow, or the camp was used for military maneuvers. Synonyms for this meaning of maneuver are the words movement, operation, exercise, and deployment. And there is a very famous phrase we use with maneuver, and that is we say room for maneuver. If you have room for maneuver, you have the opportunity to change your plans if it becomes necessary or desirable. And we say sometimes, you left me no room for maneuver. That means I can't change my plans right now at the last minute. So remember, room for maneuver is a very common phrase that you can use. And the next time you remember this picture of the Heimlich maneuver, remember what the word maneuver means and how we can use it in different contexts and different meanings. And now for the next keyword, formulate. Now you look at the picture and you can see that somebody is drawing something on the board using a chalk, but what is the drawing actually? If you look closely at it, it looks like a plan, and it's a plan for a game of football or something like that. We have the movements of players, the X's and O's represent the players, the arrows represent the movements. Maybe that is the coach and he's explaining to the players how they should move. He is coming up with a plan. But how does that relate to the word formulate? Is the coach here formulating a plan? Can we say that? What does the word formulate mean? Let's find out. Now, formulate is a verb. If you formulate something such as a plan or proposal, you invent it, thinking about the details carefully. For example, little by little, he formulated his plan for escape. Maybe he was in prison somewhere and he invented his plan very carefully, thinking about all the details very carefully. And synonyms for this meaning of formulate are the words devise, plan, develop, and prepare. Formulate can also be used in a different context. If you formulate a thought, opinion, or idea, you express it or describe it using particular words. For example, I was impressed by the way he could formulate his ideas. And synonyms for this meaning of formulate are the words express, detail, frame, and define. So the next time you remember this picture of the blackboard with this person drawing a plan on it, remember the word formulate and what it means. And now for the next keyword, confront. Now you look at the picture and you can see these two people. Obviously it's the workplace and it is an exaggerated picture of a workplace, but sometimes it happens even without the boxing gloves. You come to a point where you really want to hit another person, but remember that you always have to control your temper, no matter what. But this is not exactly what we want to talk about here. What we want to talk about is the word confront. And how does that relate to the word confront? Is that the meaning of confront? Let's find out. Now, confront is a verb. If you are confronted with a problem, task, or difficulty, you have to deal with it. For example, she was confronted with severe money problems. She had to deal with these money problems. She faced those problems. She had to deal with them. Another example, ministers underestimated the magnitude of the task confronting them, the task they had to deal with. There's no other way. You have to deal with something. If you confront something or if a task confronts you, you have to deal with it. And we can use confront in a different context. If you confront a difficult situation or issue, you accept the fact that it exists and try to deal with it. For example, we're learning how to confront death. Here, instead of running away from something or just denying that something even exists, we are learning how to confront death. First thing, we accept the fact that it exists and we try to deal with it, not to hide away from it. And synonyms for this meaning of confront are the words tackle, deal with, cope with, and brave. And we can also use confront in a different context. If you are confronted by something that you find threatening or difficult to deal with, it is there in front of you. For example, I was confronted with an array of knobs, levers, and switches. It was difficult. I didn't know what to do, but it was right there in front of me. I was confronted. It was right in front of me, and I had to deal with them, and they were difficult. We also have a different way to use confront. If you confront someone, you stand or sit in front of them, especially when you are going to fight, argue, or compete with them. And that is closer to what we saw in the picture. For example, She pushed her way through the mob and confronted him face to face. She was not afraid of him. She was ready to fight, argue, or compete with that man with no fear whatsoever. And synonyms for this meaning of confront are the words challenge, face, oppose, and tackle. And one last context for confront. If you confront someone with something, you present facts or evidence to them in order to accuse them of something. For example, she had decided to confront Catherine with what she had learned. She wanted to present the facts to Catherine with the evidence, and usually when you confront somebody, you present the facts ready to accuse them of something. Another example, I could not bring myself to confront him about it. I could not stand up to him, tell him about the facts, and accuse him of something, whatever the problem may be. So the next time you remember this picture of these two men ready to fight, remember the word confront and what it means. And now for the next keyword, duration. Now you look at this beautiful hourglass. It is lying in the sand. Now the hourglass always symbolizes the passage of time. And it can be used actually to calculate the time that passes. But how does that relate to the word duration? What we know for sure is the word duration has to do with time. But how does it relate to time? Let's find out. Now, duration is an uncountable noun. The duration of an event or state is the time during which it happens or exists. For example, he was given the task of protecting her for the duration of the trial, for the whole time during the trial happens. And synonyms for this meaning of duration are the words length, time, period, and term. And we have a common phrase used with the word duration, that is for the duration. If you say that something will happen for the duration, you mean that it will happen for as long as a particular situation continues. For example, his wounds knocked him out of combat for the duration. And as long as he is in this bad shape or nobody treats his wounds, he will stay out of combat. This situation will continue. So the next time you remember this picture of the hourglass, remember the word duration and what it means. And now for the next keyword, self-seeking. Now you look at this picture and you can see this man maybe taking a selfie and he's kind of winking at himself. Doesn't that sound strange? But you know, the selfie generation has no limits, and all of these things are possible. We have selfies of people kissing themselves in the mirror or just all those kind of strange things. But that's not what we're here to say. We're not here to criticize selfies or whatever people do with selfies. It's their business. We're here to talk about the meaning of the word self-seeking. A close word to that is selfish or self-conceited or somebody who is full of himself or herself. But what does self-seeking exactly mean? Let's find out. Now, self-seeking is an adjective. If you describe someone as self-seeking, you disapprove of them because they are interested only in doing things which give them an advantage over other people. For example, he said that democracy would open the way for self-seeking politicians to abuse the situation. Self-seeking politicians are bad because they are only interested in doing things that will give them an advantage over other people, regardless of what that might mean to the people they are representing. Anyway, self-seeking comes with a bunch of synonyms, words like selfish, self-interested, and mercenary. So the next time you remember this man taking a selfie and winking at himself, remember the word self-seeking and what it means. And now for the final keyword for this chapter, discretion. Now you look at the picture and you can see that this lady is holding her finger on her mouth, and this gesture usually means to calm down, not to make any noises, or we can use it sometimes to keep things as a secret. Could that be the meaning of discretion, or is that related to the word discretion? Let's find out. Now, discretion is an uncountable noun. Discretion is the quality of behaving in a quiet and controlled way without drawing attention to yourself or giving away personal or private information. So on one side, it has the idea of being quiet, and on the other side, it has the idea of being private, not to tell secrets. For example, Larson sometimes joined in the fun, but with more discretion. And discretion also comes in a different context. If someone in a position of authority uses their discretion or has the discretion to do something in a particular situation, they have the freedom and authority to decide what to do. So this time it's not about being secretive or being quiet, it's something else. It is having the freedom or authority to decide what to do the way you like it. For example, this committee may want to exercise its discretion to look into those charges. They have the freedom to do it, or actually because it's a committee, it's elected or it's appointed by somebody, it has the authority to do that. And discretion can also come in a different context as an expression. We say at the discretion of someone. And if something happens at someone's discretion, it can happen only if they decide to do it or give their permission. So it's like we're saying it's up to you. It is a little bit formal because in everyday conversation we say it's up to you. We don't say at your discretion. But anyway, if you use that in a formal way, it means that you decide whether this happens or not. For example, we may vary the limit at our discretion and will notify you of any change. We don't need to ask you before we do that. We have the right to choose and we will do it. And we're talking here about varying the limit of whatever that might be. Or here's another example where there are no service charges added to the bill, tip at your discretion. Well, we're not saying that you have to leave a tip, but we're kind of like asking you nicely to tip, but it's at your discretion. So that means you decide whether you want to do this or not, and obviously you decide the amount of the tip because we don't have service charges added to the bill. And one last context for the word discretion, also in the form of a phrase, discretion is the better part of valor. Well, this might be a long phrase, but it has a special meaning. If you say discretion is the better part of valor, you mean that avoiding a dangerous or unpleasant situation is sometimes the most sensible thing to do. It's not always wise to charge ahead and fight. Sometimes, if you avoid those dangerous or unpleasant situations, that is sensible and wise. That is the meaning of this expression. Discretion is the better part of valor. So the next time you remember the picture of this lady with her finger on her mouth, remember the word discretion and what it means.